Hey guys. So I'm gonna be talking about recreational marijuana. So yeah. What is marijuana? Marijuana is a plant that is naturally grown for medicinal or recreational reasons. And so recreationally, we're mainly gonna talk about recreational, but it is a little hard because medicinal uses can be incorporated in recreational uses, if that makes sense. Though recreationally, people use it for the THC, which is what gets them high. Um, so yeah. Some background: marijuana is one of the oldest drugs seen to be used for medicinal purposes by like the Chinese, Persians, Greeks, and in the U.S., medicinal marijuana um, it was established, I guess I guess I would say. Um, but this Tax Act of 1973, um, it basically taxed the medicinal use of marijuana. So doctors could prescribe it, but if they did, they would require them to make a lot of detailed notes about who they're prescribing it to, for what reasons, and it was just hard work to prescribe it, and so they just ultimately didn't want to. And then also, like in a really weird way, the federal government didn't accept the taxes of the marijuana they taxed. So I mean, it just didn't make sense, and the liquor companies actually were pushing for illegalization of marijuana completely. Um, so yeah, alcohol. Um, so some current research in the Lacey one, marijuana had no statistical significance in car crashes when adjusting for things such as gender, ethnicity, and age. Um, So basically, they looked at the car crashes and they saw that after adjusting for a lot of those things like gender, ethnicity, age, there was no um, link to say that marijuana caused some type of crash or increased some type of crash risk, I would say. And property damage only, that means that this research article was mainly looking at property damage, which is the most common types of crashes. So, because there was no statistical significance between the crashes and in this case just property damage crashes, that means that marijuana really isn't as much of a risk for crashes as much as people think. Um, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that everyone is going to react differently to marijuana. So you can't expect one person to have the same outcome as another. So it's really hard to say that um, this caused this crash when there are so many factors that could be attributed to someone's driving and things like that. So, and also within the Lacey study, they talked about a different article who were looking at marijuana and crashes and that were saying that there was a risk for higher crashes. Um, but when they did the exact same study, they adjusted for things such as if someone was wearing their seatbelt, how fast they were going, just the time of day, I guess. And they found that after they adjusted for those things, there was no statistical significance in the crashes of their studies. Um, so yeah. And then the second study, they just basically compared states that legalized it, which was back then mainly Washington and Colorado. And then they compared it to states that had it legal or illegal. And there was no difference in the rates of crashes between the legal state and the non-legal state. So productivity. So with this article, they looked at adolescents who were heavy users of marijuana, and it had the effects of on their memory and on their just cognition. And as they got older, those side effects tended to be more prominent, and eventually they can be permanent. So what you're going to see is people, adults who do have some cognitive issue from marijuana use is going to suggest that they have been a long time user since probably adolescent age, because if they've been smoking that young, it's going to be the side effects are definitely going to be there. That's because their brains aren't developed until the age of 25. So if they're growing up with this drug in their system, no, regardless of how like safe it is, it's gonna really mess with their thinking processes and memory. Definitely a lot of memory issues. Um, but compared to adults, when adults use for the first time, um, when they're a lot older, you're going to see acute effects like the memory issues and stuff like that. I mean, that happens when you smoke, but it's not going to be on the level of an adolescent heavy user. That makes sense. So, these studies just basically talked about how CBD oil is used to help people with drug addiction and their relapse. Basically, it helped them reduce their chances of relapsing by making them less stressed or anxiety or have less anxiety from the CBD. And people actually just in general smoke the drug, not just the CBD oil, but they smoke marijuana to help them with their drug addictions to things like heroin or crack cocaine. Um, and then the Gilman 2017 study, addiction rate among adults is only 9%, and 9% is can still be seen as a lot, but the thing with the addiction is that there is no established physical addiction to marijuana. It would be better to say marijuana can manifest a disorder. So people who use marijuana to cope in a negative way are going to abuse it and be addicted in the sense they need it to cope. Um, or like if someone makes a habit of it in their everyday routine, it's going to be harder to break from a habit you do every single day. Yeah. So edibles versus smoking. So for edibles, I wasn't going to bring anything. Essentially, you could just put THC in any foods like butter, cookies, brownies. Um, and edibles are very different from smoking. Edibles are going to last you so much longer. And edibles are also going to take a lot longer to kick in. It usually probably takes like 30, 40 minutes. That's one of the articles said. And for my 3D visual, I was going to bring in this blunt. Um, for the record, there's basil in this. Yeah. So basically, I was gonna show the blunt, and the blunt is just basically like a cigar wrap with marijuana inside, and then people smoke that. And other ways to smoke, people usually do like the joint, which is just a paper, and then bongs. And smoking usually will have a very fast effect, 3 to 5 seconds. When you breathe it in, it goes into your lungs and into your bloodstream, into your brain. And yeah, I would say smoking is probably one of like the most common ways people uh, use marijuana. So why do people use it? People use marijuana for a lot of reasons. People use it recreationally to socialize, relax, feelings of happiness, medical reasons, so people with seizures, Parkinson's, cancers, glaucomas, things like that. And also, like, people who recreationally use it to like feel happy are also going to get the medicinal effects whether they want to or not. It's marijuana just has those properties. So um, I think they're very intertwined with each other. Um, so side effects, people get really paranoid. I've read a lot of like study cases where people just get really paranoid or anxious. Um, and I think that's a very large contributor to the driving while high, because if it does induce paranoia, if you just think about it, like when you're really nervous for something, it makes you not behave the way you are. So if this is inducing paranoia and you can't calm yourself, not you're not gonna drive effectively. You're gonna be very nervous about hitting something. You're gonna overcorrect yourself. You're gonna be way more slow. It really goes back to like it depends on like who you are and if you're experienced or you're not. Um, redness of the eyes. People get drowsy at the end, and they usually just end up falling asleep, which is another reason why people use it to like help them sleep. Um, Slowed reaction. Yeah, things do seem a little slow. A lot of this study cases say people just felt very like in a dream state, slowed like time area. Um, People can get dizzy, and that's usually when people over intoxicate themselves. Um, it'll cause dizziness and vomiting. It'll increase your appetite, even though there are some studies that suggest that there is no effect between marijuana and like um, your hunger. But for some reason, we get hungry, we get the munchies. So I thought that was interesting. And your heart rate does go up. That just happens. Risks. So if you're in a legal state, don't do it. You'll get in trouble. And if you have a medical condition that could worsen if you use marijuana, unless you're like allergic or you have asthma, but you could probably just take an edible. Um, I really don't know what other medical condition that could worsen from marijuana. Yeah, not on the top of my head. And first time using, usually um, people who have no experience with marijuana are not going to know their limit and they're not going to know how much to take. Or commonly, what happens is they take too much and they have a bad experience. So, and 25 and under, so that goes back to like young adolescents who are smokers and their brains are not developed yet. They can have like cognitive issues and memory problems. So, the trend medical states are the ones in the red, and the recreationals are in the 9. And you can see that first it was common to medically use marijuana, and then it turned into recreational use, starting with Colorado, which was like the first state to make it legal. And then it just kind of ended in a domino effect. This is 2015 versus 2018. Um, yeah, I'm going to see states make it legal. So things to keep in mind when deciding to use. Um, Marijuana affects people differently. Choose your method of consumption wisely versus if it's your first time, I would suggest you not take an edible. Like alcohol, some people may be lightweights, some heavyweights. Same thing with smoking. Some people need a little bit more to feel it. Some people don't need that much at all. Um, Over intoxication can happen. So if you smoke way too much in a short period of time, you're gonna get really high and you might get really dizzy and you might throw up. Choose who you smoke with wisely. Yeah, just it's the set and setting. You're gonna have a bad trip if you're in an area that just is gonna induce anxiety or paranoia, and that weed already does that to you. So you don't want to be in an area that or in a setting that's gonna heighten it essentially. Um, and know your limit. Just know how much you can handle. Um, that's really it. And just being responsible and just knowing yourself. Should people practice this trend? Yes. If your state has legalized marijuana, you're 21 and over, open minded, responsible, and you treat it like alcohol, not abusing it. That's what I'm saying. My activity. Well, we're not doing my activity, but I was just going to have you guys um, read details of people and based on their details, assign them how long they're going to be in prison. So my main points would have just been recreational marijuana can eliminate punishments of those who possess. So like these punishments could have completely been avoidable. It's a waste of time and money. Enforcing marijuana laws costs up to $3.6 billion a year. which is a lot of money, and we could allocate those funds to like something more important. Um, and recreational marijuana gives many opportunities for people who need it for medicinal and non-medicinal reasons. So if people just use it just for recreational reasons, they're going to get the medicinal properties regardless, if those were their intentions to use it for like pain relief or something. And yeah.